The latest Pompey news, updates every day from the Pompey Sound news desk.
Transfer gossip and rumour latest. The Dundee Courier is reporting this.
Pompey have reportedly joined the race for Dundee's highly rated young defender Luke Graham, but they'll face stiff competition from Hearts, Aberdeen and other Championship sides. According to reports, the Blues are considering a move for the talented youngster as they look to get their January transfer business rolling. Graham, just 21, is considered one of the best up-and-coming prospects in Scottish football, which explains why Championship rivals like Sheffield United and QPR are also keeping tabs on him. Back in Scotland, established Premiership clubs Aberdeen and Hearts are also said to be admirers of the Scotland under-21 international. He has 18 months left on his contract with Dundee, and while there have been talks about extending his stay at Dens Park, serious interest from other clubs could change things. He's already made 23 appearances this season, bringing his career total to an impressive 119 senior games, a huge number for a player still learning his trade. The big question is whether Pompey will test the waters with a concrete offer for the centre-back to kickstart their January window. At first glance, the middle of defence seems like an area where John Mousinho is well stocked. But a closer look shows why they might be in the market, as injuries have plagued their options while they fight to solidify their place in the Championship. Currently, Pompey have Connor Shaughnessy, Hayden Matthews, Regan Poole, Ebain Boat and Josh Knight on the books. Shaughnessy, however, has only just returned from a 3-month hamstring injury, while Knight is currently sidelined with a back problem. Hayden Matthews has struggled for form after an ankle injury wrecked his first season at Fratton Park, and Ebain Boat has only managed 6 appearances after his own debut campaign was cut short by a serious knee injury. Even Regan Poole, Pompey's most consistent performer this season, had to deal with muscle issues last year following a 10-month layoff with a ruptured ACL. While 5 central defenders looks like a healthy number, a loan or permanent move for one of the current crop could free up a squad space. We'll have to wait and see, but Mousinho has indicated he's hopeful of getting most of the club's January business done by the time they travel to Sheffield Wednesday on January 17th.
It will intrigue quite a few people and probably upset some people that we appear to be interested in a central defender, another central defender, a young central defender, a very promising one as well, linked during his youth career with the likes of Celtic and Rangers, and more recently with Championship clubs such as Sheffield United, where he had trials and they had a good long look at him before, not long ago, he signed a year-long extension to his contract with Dundee, so they'll want money, of course. He is a good player, obviously. He's a good prospect, obviously. He was born round the corner from St Johnstone Football Club, who picked him up initially. And there is, of course, a kind of a Pompey link there in that Toby Stewart is currently lighting up the sky at St Johnstone, but it seems to us extremely unlikely that there's been any contact between the two of them for Graham to pick Stewart's brains on what sort of a club Pompey might be. He may have had absolutely no contact, no idea that any contact is taking place between a whole variety of clubs that are said to be interested in him. And all that we can say is that the Dundee Courier, and this story has been picked up by a number of local news agencies, the Dundee Courier is saying that amongst the 2 or 3 Championship sides that are interested in Graham, one is Pompey. And that's about the only football story concerning Pompey that is live and valid at the moment. Things are rather quiet in and around Fratton Park. So what follows is a brief and hopefully thorough investigation into the pros and cons and the ins and outs of calling off a game of football because the pitch is frozen and therefore unplayable. Looked at from the Pompey perspective and looked at from the Ipswich perspective. Some will find it interesting, others will find it a bit train-spotterish, and we won't take it at all personally if you decide to opt out now. Here comes that report.
Many people connected with Pompey were pleased and relieved the Ipswich game was called off. The East Anglian Times reported a very different reaction.
For the hundreds of Ipswich Town fans who made the long trip down to the south coast, it was a day of frustration and wasted journeys. Today's game at Portsmouth was called off due to a frozen pitch, but the real story was the confusing and delayed communication that left supporters in limbo. So how did it all unfold? Portsmouth had put frost covers on the Fratton Park pitch on Friday, but temperatures in Hampshire still dipped as low as -3 degrees overnight. While 4 supporters' coaches were leaving Portman Road at 8:45 a.m., With countless others starting their journeys by car and train, decisions were already being made behind the scenes. We now understand that officials held early pitch inspections at 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Kieran McKenna was even present at both, making it clear he was desperate for the game to go ahead. Crucially, none of this was shared publicly. The first official word didn't come until 10:40 a.m., when Portsmouth tweeted that an 11 a.m. inspection was scheduled. Just 12 minutes later, Ipswich added that a further inspection might happen at 12 p.m., should there be signs of improvement. Then, at 11:10 a.m., the final decision came. Referee Lee Doughty had called the game off. A shadowed area near the south stand was deemed too dangerous for the players. The supporters, coaches by this point, had to turn around at Cobham services. To rub salt in the wound, by midday, the temperature had climbed back above freezing. Honestly, the timing of the final announcement isn't the issue. At least it came almost 4 hours before kickoff. But the muddled communication beforehand simply wasn't good enough. If the pitch was a concern as early as 9 a.m., the travelling fans deserved to know. This whole situation raises bigger questions. Portsmouth, along with Preston, are one of only 2 clubs in the Championship without undersoil heating. Back in October, their chief executive Andy Cullen told the Portsmouth News that the plan was to update their old, soil-based pitch within the next few years, noting the £1.7 million cost of a new pitch with undersoil heating. He pointed out they are lucky in Portsmouth that we don't need it too much, with their last postponement for a frozen pitch coming way back in 2012. Lucky or not, this is the second time this season an opponent hasn't been able to host Ipswich because of the weather, following the waterlogged pitch at Blackburn in September. With so much at stake in this division, maybe it's time the EFL considered new rules about pitch standards for second-tier clubs. That said, you can't beat Mother Nature. Player and fan safety has to come first, and freezing temperatures hit the whole country. Sheffield United and Hull City also had their games called off, with the Hull postponement announced less than 20 minutes before kickoff, because the areas around the pitch were deemed unsafe. For Portsmouth, this postponement is probably a blessing in disguise. They were thrashed 5-0 by Bristol City on New Year's Day, and came into this fixture with 11 first-team players out, including key attackers Colby Bishop, Jacob Murphy, and Callum Lang. They'll be quite happy to play this one at a later date. For Ipswich though, it's a real momentum killer. A win at Fratton Park would have sealed 10 points from a possible 12 over the festive period, and marked their first run of 3 straight wins this season. After a hectic schedule, Town's tails were up and a nearly full-strength squad was fired up for one last push. Instead, they now face a 16-day gap between league games, before Blackburn visit Portman Road on Saturday, January 17th. This sudden break could force Kieran McKenna to rethink his plans for this Saturday's FA Cup tie against Blackpool. He might have been tempted to field a team of fringe players, but now he may need to play a stronger side to prevent his key men from losing their match fitness and becoming more prone to injury. While Town was stuck in traffic, their promotion rivals were in action. Middlesbrough's 4-0 thrashing of Southampton saw them leapfrog Ipswich into second place. The one silver lining is that leaders Coventry City lost 3-2 at Birmingham, meaning Frank Lampard's men have now dropped points in 6 of their last 8 games. Ipswich remain 8 points behind them. Elsewhere, there were important wins for Preston, Millwall, Stoke, Wrexham and QPR, making the top half of the table incredibly tight. Just 6 points now separate Borough in second from Wrexham in ninth. Within that pack, Ipswich, Watford and Hull all have a crucial game in hand. So when will this fixture be replayed? For the second time this season, Ipswich face the prospect of squeezing a long rearranged midweek away trip, and 830 miles of unnecessary travel, into an already packed schedule. You can bet the Blues will push for the game to be played sooner rather than later, hoping to catch Portsmouth while their injury crisis continues. I understand they might even request it be played next week, between the Blackpool and Blackburn games. With Portsmouth playing Arsenal in the FA Cup on Sunday, the earliest it could likely be is Wednesday, January 14th. That would mean a very quick turnaround for a Saturday lunchtime kickoff against Blackburn, far from ideal. The next available midweek slot would be between the away trip to Sheffield United, January 24th, and the home game against Preston, January 31st. The calendar is already looking congested, with midweek games against Bristol City, January 20th, Watford, February 24th, Stoke, March 10th, and Charlton, April 22nd. And if Ipswich or Hull progress in the FA Cup, Their league match on February 14th will also need a new date, with the home game against Leicester on March 7th also potentially at risk. The fixture pile-up is only just beginning.
So that's what the East Anglian Times had to say about it from the Ipswich point of view. And picking the bones out of that, you can see why they would have liked to have known that the game was in jeopardy as they were setting off, which they report was around about 8:40 in the morning. But of course, the officials who had the job of deciding one way or the other had to bear so many things in mind. Obviously, the player safety and the officials' safety was absolutely paramount, but they were making a judgment about whether the pitch was going to warm up sufficiently for the frost to disappear and for the ground to soften. And because they wanted to have the game played, everybody wanted to have the game played, at least Pompey would not have been open about the fact that they didn't mind the game being postponed. They would have gone through the motions of doing everything that they could in order to make sure that the fixture happened, but were probably relieved to discover that the game was going to be played at a later date. They didn't manipulate that in any way, and they were not in any way guilty of any kind of malpractice or legerdemain in having the game called off. Absolutely none whatsoever, and Ipswich and the East Anglian Times aren't alleging that. But the balance between giving the game every chance of going ahead and then eventually having to call it off because it was dangerous for the players did mean that a great many people from East Anglia, from Ipswich, made what must have been a really annoying... We've all been there. Anybody who follows their team away from home will have found out halfway up the motorway at some point in their pursuit of their team that the game is called off, and such a leaden feeling in the pit of your belly, that all that effort and work and getting up early and sitting on a coach, which is not great fun, or sitting cramped in a car, the six of you, for 2 hours, and then having to turn around and head back. It's just no fun at all. So our sympathies go out to all the Ipswich fans for whom that was their experience. But we are indeed happy at Pompey, I think it's fair to say, to live to fight another day. By way of a quick postscript on this story, 2 championship clubs that do have undersoil heating also had to call their games off. In the case of Sheffield United, it's not clear yet whether their undersoil heating wasn't switched on in time or whether it was malfunctioning. And in the case of Hull, this is an interesting one. Hull has a very big pitch. It turns out that the undersoil heating worked as far as the pitch was concerned, but it stopped on the touch lines and the goal lines. And so the referee deemed that that part of the pitch, which players can very easily fall onto, was dangerous and therefore unplayable. You might be interested in the official guidance that the FA issues to referees in the event of there being a question mark about whether the pitch is playable.
Pitch inspection guidance. It is vital from the referee's viewpoint that when asked to undertake a pitch inspection you do so professionally and remembering the overriding factor of player safety. At the forefront of your mind you must always think, is the playing surface safe to play on? If a pitch inspection is required, some competitions will allow the home club/venue to postpone a match. Arrive in plenty of time to ensure the inspection is complete in good time. Keep both clubs informed as and when appropriate. Prior to reaching a decision, the referee who is making the inspection should consider the following: whether or not the ground playing area is dangerous, the views of the home club groundsman in terms of local knowledge and draining capabilities in the event of standing water, the existing condition of the playing surface in conjunction with the prevailing weather conditions as previously A professional approach must be adopted when carrying out an inspection. It is not acceptable just to take a cursory look at the field of play in normal dress, i.e. suit/blazer, etc. Sports kit should be worn, along with appropriate footwear, i.e. football boots. All areas of the pitch should be inspected. A ball should be used to determine whether the surface is playable, for movement and bounce. Night fog creates its own problems. Use perspectives from ground level and the back of a stand. Check forecast. Remember that there is a responsibility to paying spectators. When dealing with such elements as frost or ice, remember that the highest temperature of the day is usually around midday. Get a forecast if necessary of the projected temperature for the time when the match is due to conclude. The manpower available to the home club to carry out any necessary work to make the ground playable. The time the visiting club are due to commence their journey. Liaise with managers to gauge the thoughts of both clubs. Remember, the decision as to whether the match is played is the referee's. Once you have made your decision, it's important to communicate it with the home and the away team. At some point, it is important to inform the competition organising body.
So, interesting to note that the officials who are making the judgment about whether or not the pitch is frozen and therefore unplayable are required to wear football boots so they can get a feel for the surface, carry a ball so that they can bounce it and establish again the state of the ground underneath the grass, because you can't actually see whether a bit of earth is frozen if it's got a good covering of grass, and that they check every single part of the pitch. The one thing that they seem to lack, it seems to me, is their footballing equivalent of a stimp meter. I think in golf they've got a means of measuring how fast the putting surface is in a fairly scientific way. And I can remember that certain cricket matches, sometimes the commentators would go out to the middle before the game started and take a look at the pitch, and if there are any cracks in the surface, they would put their front door key in to see how far it went down. So there are means of scientifically measuring certain aspects of a playing surface, but it doesn't look to us as though they are available to football referees. And in the end, it was just down to the opinion of the ref and the other three officials as to whether or not the game was playable, the pitch was playable. Interesting. Certain aspects of this whole story are being examined by certain fans, and the suggestion is being made that despite all the advances that have been made in technology and what have you with football, certain things are still just a little bit primitive.